It's gotta be one of the most painful mysteries of being human, right? You tell yourself, never again. You end a bad relationship, you do the work, you heal, and then, months or even years later, you find yourself with a totally new person feeling that same old familiar ache in your chest. So, why? Why does this keep happening? Well, I can tell you it's not bad luck, and it's not because you have bad judgment. It's about a blueprint, a script really, that was written deep inside you a long, long time ago. So let's start to pull back the curtain on that script together. Does that sound familiar? Like really familiar? It's that creeping sense of déjà vu. That tightness you feel when you realize you're walking on eggshells again. Or the way they start to pull away just as you lean in. It's a haunting feeling, isn't it? Realizing that the face is different, but the emotional story is exactly the same. For so many of us, this isn't just a pattern, it feels like a prison. And today, in this explainer, we're going to find the key. All right, so here's our game plan. We're gonna break this down into 6 parts. First, we'll nail down the symptoms, what this cycle actually looks like. Then we're going way back to its origins in our childhood. We'll look at the brain chemistry that makes these toxic relationships feel so addictive. Then we'll zoom in on the single most common dynamic that keeps people trapped. And most importantly, we're gonna map out how to break the cycle, and finally, how to start choosing a new story for yourself. So, first things first. How do you even know if you're stuck in this loop? Well, it all starts with recognizing the signs. And these aren't just little quirks or preferences. No, these are consistent, predictable behaviors that point to something much deeper going on under the surface. And look, these aren't just random quirks. They're all connected. They feed into each other. It often starts with this magnetic pull towards people who are, emotionally unavailable. You find yourself overlooking huge red flags because the initial attraction feels so intense. But here's the thing, that feeling you call chemistry, it might actually be your nervous system recognizing a familiar pattern of anxiety. This leads to giving way too many chances, always hoping they'll change. And before you know it, you're in that classic push-pull, always chasing someone who's backing away, just to start the whole thing over when it ends. Okay, and this is probably the most important thing to hear right now. If you see yourself in these signs, the very first step is to let go of the self-blame. Seriously, it makes zero logical sense to repeat things that cause us pain. But we're not doing it because we're stupid. We're doing it because our brain is on autopilot and it's using a very old map. A map that taught it that whatever is familiar must be safe, even if that familiar feeling is pain. We are unconsciously picking people who feel like home, even if home was a pretty painful place. So to really get why we make these choices today, we have to go back, way back. We've got to look at who drew that map in the first place, because the most fundamental lessons we ever learn about love, trust, and connection, they get hardwired into our nervous system before we can even talk. Psychologists have a name for this blueprint. They call it our internal working model. So think of it like this. It's a rule book for relationships that's running in the background of your mind all the time. It was written based on how our parents or caregivers treated us. It answered really big questions like, can I count on people? Is it safe for me to be vulnerable? Do I have to earn love? And this model becomes the filter through which we see every single relationship for the rest of our lives. And this internal working model is what creates our attachment style. So if your caregivers were pretty much always there for you, you likely developed a secure attachment. You believe you're worthy of love. But if their care was hit or miss, you might have become anxious, learning that you have to chase and work for love. If they were distant or cold, you could become avoidant, learning that intimacy is dangerous and you're safer on your own. And in really chaotic or frightening homes, a disorganized style can show up, where the person you want comfort from is also the person you're afraid of. Honestly, most of our relationship drama comes from one of these insecure styles. And this right here is the absolute crux of the problem. Your nervous system is not designed to find what is healthy. It's designed to find what is familiar. So if the feeling of love in your childhood was tangled up with anxiety and uncertainty, guess what your brain registers as love in adulthood? A calm, stable, secure partner can feel boring, or like something's wrong, all because they aren't triggering that old, familiar stress response. Okay, so there are 2 big psychological ideas that really nail why we do this. The first is what Freud called repetition compulsion. It's our unconscious brain trying to go back to the scene of the crime, so to speak, but to get it right this time. It's like, this time, I'll get the distant person to love me. The other is imago theory, which suggests we are unconsciously searching for a partner who has a mix of our caregiver's best and, especially, worst traits. The hidden hope, That if we can get this person to finally love us the way we always wanted, we can go back in time and heal that original wound. Okay, so the psychology is pretty mind-blowing, right? But it gets even crazier when you look at what's actually happening inside our brains. Because this isn't just about feelings or old memories, it's about powerful chemical reactions that can make these relationships feel just as addictive as any drug. So picture this, you meet someone new and your brain just lights up like a pinball machine. Your amygdala, which is kind of like your brain's smoke detector, is scanning them for emotional familiarity. It's what gives you that "I feel like I've known you forever" vibe, but it can easily mistake a familiar toxic pattern for safety. At the same time, the rush of infatuation actually shuts down parts of your prefrontal cortex. That's your logic and reason center. It's literally why we don't see the red flags. And then the ventral tegmental area starts pumping out dopamine, that reward chemical, making you feel amazing and want more, more, more. And in these unhealthy relationships, this whole dopamine system gets completely hijacked by something called intermittent reinforcement. And the best way to understand this is to think about a slot machine. A slot machine is addictive not because you win all the time, but because you never know when you're going to win. That unpredictability is the most powerful motivator there is. An unpredictable partner does the exact same thing. They give you affection, then they pull away. You get a little bit of warmth, then coldness. And those rare moments of affection, after being starved for it, give you a massive dopamine hit. You become addicted not to them, but to the hope of the next win. And this is the engine that drives that classic, awful abuse cycle. It kicks off with the honeymoon phase. All that intense affection and love bombing floods your brain with dopamine. But then comes the tension-building phase, where they pull back and your anxiety goes through the roof. That leads to an explosive incident, a fight, a blow-up, and then reconciliation. They apologize, they make promises, and you get this huge rush of dopamine, not from joy, but from sheer relief. That cycle creates what's known as a trauma bond, an attachment that's literally forged by the roller coaster of pain and relief. All right, so we've got the childhood blueprint. We've got the brain chemistry of addiction. Now let's see what happens when they collide in the most common and honestly, the most explosive relationship dynamic out there, the anxious avoidant trap. I mean, this pairing is a total perfect storm. You've got two people with completely opposite fears and strategies. The anxious partner is terrified of being abandoned, so their gut reaction is to move closer, to pursue. The avoidant partner, on the other hand, is terrified of being smothered or losing their freedom, so their gut reaction is to pull away, to create distance. You can already see where this is going, can't you? So the whole dance starts when the anxious partner feels a little flicker of distance. They get scared, and they make a move for connection, a text, a call, asking, "Are we okay?" But to the avoidant partner, that pursuit for closeness feels like pressure. It triggers their deepest fear of being trapped. And so they do the only thing their programming knows how to do. They pull back, they withdraw. Well, that withdrawal is like gasoline on the fire of the anxious partner's fear. It confirms their worst nightmare that they're about to be abandoned. So what do? They panic, and they pursue even harder. And that, of course, just makes the avoidant partner feel even more suffocated, so they pull away even further. And around it goes. It's this tragic, self-fulfilling prophecy, where each person's behavior perfectly confirms the other's deepest fear about what love is. So you see? This isn't just, "Oh, we're not a good match." No way. It's a Molotov cocktail of a relationship. It's this highly combustible dynamic where the very thing one person does to feel safe is the very thing that makes the other person feel terrified. And the saddest part is that all that intensity, that constant high drama of the chase, gets so easily mistaken for deep, passionate, once-in-a-lifetime love. You know, if any of this is clicking for you, if it's shedding some light on your own life, it would mean a lot if you took a second to like this and subscribe. We put these explainers together to try and make sense of these really complex parts of being human, and your support really does help us keep doing that. Okay, deep breath. Understanding all of this, that's huge. That is the first massive step. But just knowing isn't enough, right? So how do we actually get out? How do we break the cycle? Well, the answer isn't really about finding the right person. It's about becoming a different kind of person yourself. So here's the playbook. First, you've got to get clear on your own attachment style. Knowing your blueprint is everything, because then you can start to see your triggers coming. Second, you have to learn how to calm your own nervous system. Instead of needing a partner to fix your anxiety, you learn to self-soothe with things like deep breathing or mindfulness. Third, boundaries. You have to learn to communicate your needs clearly, whether that's a need for more connection or a need for more space. And finally, you have to find healthier ways to get that dopamine hit. Rewire your brain by finding real joy and accomplishment in your friendships, your hobbies, your work, not just in the chaos of a relationship. And here's the cool part. When you actually start doing this work, something really amazing starts to shift. You don't just get better at avoiding the wrong person, you actually start to change what the right person even feels like. You start to write a brand new story. You know, there's this quote that it hits the nail on the head. We accept the love we think we deserve. At the end of the day, who we choose is a direct reflection of how we feel about ourselves. If you believe deep down that you're not worthy of calm, consistent love, you will unconsciously find people who prove you right. So healing this pattern is really an act of building your own self-worth. It's about deciding you deserve better than familiar pain. And this might be the biggest mindset shift of the whole thing. Real healing isn't about finding some perfect person who never has any issues. It's about becoming a person who is no longer addicted to chaos. It's about being able to sit with a secure, stable partner and not feel bored out of your mind. It's learning to tolerate what can feel at first like an uncomfortably calm relationship because for so long your body has mistaken turmoil for love. So I just want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. We're all taught to chase the spark, right? The fireworks, the intensity. But what if that spark is just the friction of two people's trauma rubbing up against each other? What if the greatest love story isn't the dramatic chase at all, but the quiet, steady, profound safety of being with someone who simply sees you, all of you, and decides to stay? Look, this pattern, it's not a life sentence. It's a map. It's a story. And you absolutely have the power to write a new ending. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me today, and don't forget to subscribe for more explainers that help you make a little more sense of yourself and of the world around you.